Right, apologies for that brief delay. What actually happened was we were starting, because usually with YouTube, with the live stream, you just play and it happens. And well, this is the first OWASP live stream with, as a predictable outcome, all tech goes wrong. Anyway, we're back to where we are supposed to be, and that is we are going to have two talks at least today. The first one will be about OWASP SKF. We will have Glenn and Riccardo Cate discussing their project, and we will then do a brief break to switch over to Rob van der Veer, who is a co-lead of the OWASP integration project. And he will explain how that project is positioning OWASP as the linking factor in the complex and fragmented global standard landscape. So yeah, having said that, we are gonna delay you no longer, and we're gonna switch to Glenn and Riccardo. And 3, 2, that one. There we go. And we're live, actually live. Okay, guys, it's up to you.
Yay, thank you very much. So we had already a very good practice run, so this time we can amaze you even more. So that's good. Yeah, so welcome to the OWASP Security Knowledge Framework talk. We are going to show and demo today the new features that we have in our dev branch that we've been working on very hard. Maybe do a small introduction of myself and Riccardo.
Yeah, so basically what I want to start out with is just this talk does not really follow the format as what we would normally give our talk in. So
Actually happened was
yeah. What are you hearing now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, well, I hear myself echoing. Or not maybe, yeah, still. It's kind of annoying.
Do you have the YouTube open of the live stream?
Actually, no. But who's clicking around?
That's me.
Oh, do you have the YouTube live stream open? Oh, well. So the thing is, this talk doesn't really follow our normal format. So basically what we want to do here is demo basically all the new beta features that we're working on. So the beta feature, and we will give some reference at the end of the talk, is basically all stored in our dev repo on our GitHub repository. So by all means, at the end of the talk, please pull it, play around with it, see if you can break it at some point. And all feedback is very much appreciated. So a little background information about me and Glenn. I am Riccardo Cate. I am CTO at Zerocopter. So I spent the last 10 years doing secure code audits, penetration testing, automated vulnerability scans, integrating security test automation, CI/CD pipelines, and I do a lot of coding. So that's basically me in a nutshell. So Glenn, please introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, so I'm the security chapter leader of ING Belgium. They're managing a big team of penetration testers, and yeah, as well doing the whole security champion program for Belgium.
Nice. So basically, and like I mentioned earlier, we do this talk like pretty much for 5 years now, since the launch of the Security Knowledge Framework. So I think we did a lot of talks especially for the NL chapter. Everybody has seen our good old-fashioned run by now, like, okay, how all the different steps in the SSDLC with the training, the security requirements, having test automation for dead-end code, over-complex code, cyclomatic complexity to get rid of all or most flaws in business logic. And then also the last part for manual verification and whatnot. We're not going to do this run today. We're going to do it a little bit, so for people who actually see this talk for the first time, to give them a bit of context. So a bit of talk is about static analysis tools and dynamic analysis tools, and what the effective coverage is of these toolings. Well, As we all know, when you run your SOS and DOS tools, you generate a whole lot of false positives. Well, here you see the OWASP benchmark project. So basically, they had an application, they benchmark, they check the results through a true positive rate versus false positive rate. As you can see here in the diagram, you have like, okay, tool reports, everything is vulnerable. Tool reports vulnerabilities randomly. You have worse than random. You have your ideal vulnerability detection and whatnot, right? So take a mental snapshot of this picture. And now I will present you the current state of most tooling on the market that kind of looks like this. So what you see is there's a lot of tools who kind of hit the threshold of like better than guessing. Yeah, so that's kind of shit. And then we also have to take into consideration that most of the tools actually also cannot check for flaws in business logic, right? So they only check for, well, injection flaws, misconfiguration, and whatnot. But they totally miss like 50% of the attack surface, which actually consists out of flaws in business logic. So my favorite example here would be the insecure direct object reference, right? Where you have like the identifier. If you change the identifier, you see another person's information. If this is a vulnerability, yes or no, that really depends on the context of the business logic of the application, right? So let's say, for instance, you have like, I don't know, a dating app, and you change the identifier, you see another person's profile. This might be intended business logic because you really want to go through all the different profiles and see the personal information to find out whether this person is a match for you, yes or no, right? But in the context of a medical application, this could actually be an issue where you could change an identifier as a normal user of the app and actually see like medical history and data of another patient. So in this context, it is a security vulnerability, right? So it all depends on the business logic of the application. Well, tools can't really check that. So that brings us to our belief system. In our belief system, the developers are really like the chosen ones, the neos. Like they know all the context of the application. They make like really big. I'm looking for the word, but I can't really find it.
Well, they make really big impact, right? Because, you know, they have the full set of context, they build the features, they build those technology stacks, those complex applications. And, you know, they know way better how this application is working inside and out than ever a security engineer or penetration tester could know, right? So that's why our belief system is really, you know, empowering those security engineers or those developers basically to, you know, have that security awareness, have the knowledge about, you know, building secure applications by design, having the knowledge about using the right set of security requirements, because that is the first step of, you know, doing security by design. And well, also in SKF we build in, you know, we had labs, but now we're going to show you a bit more about how it's integrated in SKF, because the more knowledge we shift to those developers about how to attack, how to verify vulnerabilities, and also what the design patterns are to solve them, yeah, they can do a way better job than any, you know, hacker or penetration tester that could ever do. So we really look at developers as neos, right? The ones that, you know, have the full potential to really change the world, but they're not really aware of it yet. And we want them to grow and become like, yeah, the ultimate neo who really can, you know, make that impact in the organizations and, you know, build security by design.
Yeah, so this is how we see the developers, really like the neos who have all the context, and we really want to focus on training them. Yeah.
And that also brings us a bit, you know, like how did we came up here? Why are we ranting about neo and you know, false positives? Because, you know, in the profession that we do now for more than 10 years each, we were always seeing the same type of coding mistakes. We always had like deja vu moments, you know, like, oh, another command execution or remote code execution or another SQL injection or another cross-site scripting. I mean, to be fair, if you are aware of the problem and you dived into it, you know what type of design patterns could stop this and solve these type of vulnerabilities. And yeah, it is not like rocket science, right? It's just very clear design pattern. You need to have the awareness that it can go wrong. You need to know the design pattern. And if you know that, you can prevent all these type of vulnerabilities. But actually what we saw in the last 10 years that we, now 15 years ago, but what we encountered was always the same type of vulnerabilities. And that made us quite sad as well, because you as a penetration tester, as an expert who wants to find cool and exciting stuff, will always look for the XSS and the SQLs and try to find as many, and it's quite time consuming. And yeah, all the really cool and advanced stuff, you can't focus that much on it as you would like, and that is a pity. And also when we try to look for information, we found out that it's quite scattered. So we have the situation that, like I say, a lot of coding mistakes. I see developers barely hanging on because, they do try. They have, of course, the good intention to write good working code. But, because there's no clear guidance, no free good resources available, they struggle a lot, right? They are like trying to dodge these bullets. But, we know that these developers are neos, right? So they don't have to dodge freaking bullets because they are neo, but they're not aware of it yet. So we were thinking like, okay, what can we do to help them, to guide them, and to give them options to improve and really build secure applications by design. So like 5-6 years ago, we created the project, the Security Knowledge Framework, Riccardo and myself. And basically it is, like I mentioned, the guide that those developers need. How to do secure programming from the design point of view. And not when you build the application, you've done a pen test, there are findings out of it, and then like, oh shit, let's secure now the design that we created that was already insecure to start with, right? It takes a lot of time and resources and delays in the release of your project, and maybe even it has big impact if your application get hacked. So our goal was to build like a security knowledge framework that would help and guide people, developers, to do secure programming and to be able to do security by design. And to do that, it was all about security awareness, teaching them, learning them, making a learning platform for those developers that they can use in the whole process from A to Z, from learning vulnerabilities by testing themselves so they could verify it, by understanding and having the right set of security requirements, by also having code examples that could guide them. This was our goal in the security knowledge framework. And of course, one of the most important things as well, to be clear and transparent. We wanted all this information to be open and freely for everybody to use, and to be able to build secure applications by design. And we said we were not going to do a rant, but the only thing I want to rant about is the importance of setting up the right security requirements. Because without this, you're really lost. You're on the sea, with no guidance, no compass, and you're just, floating on the sea and you have no idea where you're going to. So this is the most important thing to have set up. And what we did in the SKF project, we also used another great OWASP project, the MASVS and the ASVS. And this is basically like a building block, like a good starting point for your security requirements. And as you can see, the ASVS has different type of levels for it. So if you just start, you use level 1. If you have mission critical applications, you would use the level 3. And this is our project. What you see here, this security knowledge framework. We have like the landing page. So the security knowledge framework is an Angular/API application that you can spin up locally with Docker Compose, or you can deploy it with Kubernetes in the Google Kubernetes platform or Azure or whatever you want. So it is an application that you can use and where all type of sets of information and data is available, that we will of course demo a bit. yeah, this is an example of the ASVS that was integrated. But the main thing here of SKF is you want to make all the threats visible up front by having the right set of security requirements. And yeah, then you build applications secure by design. So there are no surprises. But what is important is, of course, to take the responsibility and sort of taking the right choice to learn these new requirements, because you're used to build in a certain way code, your design patterns. But when we talk about security, there are also design patterns to be learned. There's an investment, right, that you need to take. And this is the choice that you have as a developer to put into, and also maybe explain that to your organization, how important that is. Let's indeed go to the demo. Riccardo is going to start the security knowledge framework, the dev branch actually. So if you are interested in what you see today with the new features that we built, if you go to our GitHub project, you have the dev branch. And if you would check that out, then you can run Docker Compose or deploy it in the cloud, what you want. And then you have actually all the functionality and the features that you will see now live in this demo as well. We are still testing it, so please, if you see problems or have feedback, how we can improve it even further, let us know, because it's quite important as it's still beta. But yeah, let's have a look at the demo and see how it goes.
I think I actually already found the first problem. No, the database just locked out. Okay, perfect. So this is the security knowledge framework. So this is basically what you see after you log in. So what you see is that we made, you have your dashboard, the checklist, the knowledge base items, the code examples, and the labs. Let's start off first with the knowledge base. So basically what we did, this is also another update. What we did was we created categories because the ASVS was growing so large that we actually had to snip the checklist stuff in all the different topics that you have, like all the chapters. But this basically meant that we got a lot of checklists and things didn't really become clear. So you can also add your own categories to put in your own knowledge base items to write your own code examples for and whatnot. So this basically added another abstraction layer, so you can simply say like, we have web applications, mobile applications, but maybe also best practices for your Docker environments or for your cloud environments and whatnot, so you can easily add more abstraction to the security knowledge framework. So one of the first things that I want to show is knowledge base. So like we already mentioned, we utilize the ASVS. And what we basically did for each security control within the ASVS, we wrote a knowledge base item. So you have more in-depth information about the attack vector, the attack surface, what is the attacker able to do whenever he's able to abuse this vulnerability, and also with a small solution to guide you already in the right direction on the steps that you should take in order to mitigate it. So as you can see, this is really extensive, because that ASVS is 280 security controls. We have almost full coverage at this point, not for all the items, but for a lot of them. This is an ongoing project, right? So we're still going into this and still improving, but we have a lot of coverage. So this is the first thing that I wanted to show, because at some point we will create a new project and correlate security requirements. This one is really important. Like I said, each control is correlated to a knowledge base item. Well, we also have a good set of code examples. So we have them like for ASP, Java, PHP, Flask, Django, Go, Ruby. Well, you can also easily filter them. And here you can, get some more information about it and look into them. So these are basically like the secure coding principles, which are being shown through code examples. For each language, we have like around 30 to 40 code examples. So let's get into business. Let's start a new project. So let's call the project toolbar blah. I'm really inspirationless at this point. So we have our new project, right? So what you can do now is basically ask the security knowledge framework for requirements. So you can first select your category to work with. So let's say we're going to work on an application stack, so we're going to choose web applications. Then we're going to select the maturity, so how critical is your application, right? And according to that, you want to select the security level. Then we can choose one of the topics. So let's say that you're working on session management or access control, authentication, or you're going to build any type of feature. You can select the checklist from here. And basically you can say from here, like, okay, what do you want to have? Well, we're just starting out, so we want to have the fundamental session requirements. So there's no token-based session management, but we're using cookie-based, so you can select that from there. Defenses against session management exploits, yes, please do that as well. We're going to create a new sprint or a new feature. You can go either way. Well, this one we call blah, 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 because like I said, I'm really inspirationalist. Safe. And so basically what the security knowledge framework is going to do now, it's going to correlate. It's basically an expert system, right? So we gave it a set of answers, and according to these answers, it's going to look through the ASVS what items we need, for this feature that we're building at this point. And now you actually see, like, okay, now we have a set of security controls that we need to take into consideration with when we're working on session management type of functions. So you already see, like, hey, the HTTP only attribute, and you already see information about the secure attribute. So these are like basic things that you see missing whenever you do a penetration test. You will most certainly always find, like, oh yeah, missing attributes for secure, missing attributes for HTTP only, and whatnot. But here you already have like a fixed set of security requirements that you can already give to the developer. So ideally, you take your team's security champion or product owner or the tech lead, you let them sit together, define the security requirements, then the product owner can pick up these requirements and put them in the use story as acceptance criteria for security. Then from there, the requirements go to the software developers. The software developers make sure that they do the mitigations. And then ultimately, because it's also described, as in your acceptance criteria for security, it will probably also come up on the desk of your tester, right? So they will also write test cases for it, which you can then again utilize in CI/CD. So at some point, if somebody fails or mismerges and reintroduces a vulnerability that you already mitigated, well, your test suite will bring this up at this point, right? So this is the whole flow for setting up the security requirements. And I can imagine in a lot of contexts, you do not want to go from 0 to 100 in one go, right? So you maybe want to build it up. Well, we also have a solution for that. So basically, you can manage your checklist. You can say from here, like, okay, I want to manage it. Let's go to session management verification requirements. And we're going to manage the questionnaire. So at some point, we chose like, hey, we're going to do cookie-based session management, right? So if you say, like, at some point I had a discussion with somebody who said, like, yeah, but we also have the reverse proxy who strips stuff. So it's really hard for us to introduce the secure attribute set because it would take a significant amount of effort. No problem, because you can then just easily remove the questions that are correlated to, or the controls who are correlated to the question, right? So you can really set it up in a way that really fits you and your organization.
Exactly. Yeah, and that is also the whole idea of the ASVS. They tell that themselves when you use the ASVS. They say use it as a starting point, like a template, and then tinker and alter it. So this is the part from the security knowledge framework. You know, when you go to the expert system and you have the questions, and based on the question, and you say yes or no, it will include or exclude one or multiple security controls. But for example, if we would go to the managed checklist and we go to the checklist items, maybe Riccardo, you can show that as well.
Yeah.
So over here. So here we have the whole category for the session management. And as you can see, you can add your own checklist in here on top of the ASVS, or you can even say, no, this item of the ASVS that is not applicable for me because we never use this technology stack. Then you can simply remove it, right? So here you can fine tune the ASVS to your custom need, or you can even say, you know what, I know better, or it's so custom what I have. You can use this to build your own logic, your own expert system into the security knowledge framework. And as Riccardo already showed, when you have a huge subset of security controls, with this expert system, you can very easily go from 300 controls only to like 7, like the one that is really needed. So you go from an audit-based control thing to a risk-based, because you assess the risk of what controls you need based on the functionality or feature or sprint you are building things. So that is like a really cool feature that we now have in SKF. So you can modify the checklist, you can build your own. What Riccardo said, it's nice and very flexible. So this is indeed the managed projects and the getting the right security requirements for the people, for the developers when you're programming. If you're programming sprints or programming features and releasing them, it both will fit in this process that we defined. So that's really cool. And I think, Riccardo, I guess it's now time to move to the latest cool thing that we did in SKF.
Yeah.
And then demo that.
Yeah, so basically what we did was, so the previous release of the security knowledge framework already had all the other good stuff, right? And also already the labs in terms of like, okay, we have an overview of the different write-ups and all the labs that we have, but you have to run the labs on your own local machine by either pulling the GitHub repository which contains the labs, or your machine by means of Docker containers. But what we basically did now is we built in the option to deploy the security knowledge or the labs through the UI. So basically, you can go here, you can go in the labs, you simply press deploy, and there's nothing fancy going on at this point. Also, UI-wise and whatnot.
Because it's beta, we're building it.
But as soon as you push deploy, you see at some point like it calls you back like, hey, I'm running on localhost on this port. So now when I go to localhost port, it might take some time because my internet is shit. We find here like, hey, we have like here the lab for path traversal. So back to security knowledge framework. So you see here the lab. We deployed the lab for path traversal. Well, we can now try and test our skills on this lab. We can go to the write-up. We can follow the write-up like, okay, so this is normally how you could run the app in Docker or in Python. But here's like the whole list or the whole description, like, okay, how do I even recognize this? Where to look for? What is your reconnaissance phase? How could the code look like? What types of flaws in the code could introduce this type of flaw? And then also go through the exploitation phase, like, okay, if you find this vulnerability, how can you exploit it? So let's give another example. So now, for instance, we did path traversal, but we can also, for instance, select cross-site scripting. So we have to wait a couple of seconds. So now you see that it has been deployed on a new port. So we go here, boom, boom. So now here we have the lab for cross-site scripting, right? So this, you can follow the write-up again, go through it. Well, again, you have the reconnaissance phase with screenshots, examples, code examples, exploitation phase, which guide you step by step through how to effectively exploit this vulnerability. So this you can all do now through security knowledge framework. So the cool thing is we don't only have the SKF labs in it at this point, because through the UI you can also, for instance, deploy your other favorite stuff, right? Like, for instance, JuiceShop. So now I click JuiceShop, you see it gets exposed on a different port. I go here. Boom. So now we also have JuiceShop running.
Exactly. And big thanks to Bjorn for doing this.
Yeah, so we had some good calls with Bjorn, so how we could integrate this and whatnot. So really awesome. So you can also deploy JuiceShop through SKF, and from there you can also follow all his write-ups, because JuiceShop also has a lot of nice write-ups. So you can follow that again and really use that for training. So the idea is you set up the requirements, you get the information you need in order to mitigate it, and then from there you can go to the labs and really put your skills to the test If you have built your feature, you now know how to test it because you had your test run, right? And also, by the way, for all the security knowledge framework write-ups, we also again give references back to a web security testing guide. So yeah, that has some more elaborate write-up about. So let's say we have a lab about SQL injection. Well, the SQL injection that we have is only in the context of you have a Flask application with SQLite. But web security testing guide really helps you into also learn about other databases, how your payload would look like, how it differs, and all that good stuff, right? So that's why we try to reference to WSTG as much as possible. But what you really see in here is like we have a lot of stuff like, course exploitations, we have insecure object deserialization, server-side request forgery, tab nabbing, a lot of GraphQL stuff, JSON Web Tokens. I'm also working now on some other good stuff. So this is really growing very rapidly. So yeah, so basically this is our new feature, the whole deployment of the labs. So yeah, so this was the demo about security knowledge framework. I want to give you a couple of more slides. Okay, if you want to set it up locally, you clone our SKF Flask repository. Do clone the dev branch because it's at this point everything has been merged in a dev branch. Keep in mind that whenever you do at some point the Docker compose, it grabs your kubeconfig file. So if you have like set up that you are deploying shit to the cloud, yeah.
It will deploy then in the cloud, yes. So the focus in your kubeconfig of your kubectl, that should be on your local Kubernetes desktop. So make sure that, yeah, when you start the Docker compose, that, yeah, you have it set up like that. Otherwise, it will deploy all the labs in, yeah, your cloud platform that it was pointing to.
Yeah. So that's really good to know. So in the Docker compose, there's also other configurations that you can do, right? Like pointing the instance to an external database and setting all the secrets. So if you want to use it for production, you really have to provision some secrets at deployment. So you can all find that good stuff in the Docker compose file. So what you can do is, if you have Docker desktop, you can set it up on your local machine. You simply just have to enable Kubernetes apply and restart, and then you have the whole config file set up. If you don't have Docker desktop because you're not working on either Linux or either Windows or Mac, the alternative could be for Linux, I believe, something like Minikube. So after setting everything up, you can run the Docker compose, and then basically you have everything running. So how it looks under the hood is like, now you have your host machine, Docker desktop, we have an Nginx reverse proxy, which exposes SKF to the outside world. It can communicate to Angular, to the API, but in the internal network is RabbitMQ. So RabbitMQ is basically used for as a job queue for all the deployments in the Kubernetes cluster, right? RabbitMQ has a worker that communicates to the Kubernetes API, which eventually deploys all the labs on your Kubernetes instance. So again, you have the SKF API. It calls the RabbitMQ server to create a deployment job. It's being put in the job queue. Then from there, the job queue sees if there's a worker at its disposal to push the job to. The worker ultimately communicates through the Kubernetes API and deploys the labs in your Kubernetes cluster. We have a good blog. I will post the link in the chat after the talk, so you can read through the blog and like read all the different steps you need to take to set it up locally. Yeah? You still there?
Yep, I'm still there. So remember that I still wanted to do a small rant about security requirements and why that was so important. Well, here you have the true cost of a defect, according to like NIST and some websites that we found. And here is like the percentage how the intensity goes up in what type of process you are. So relative cost to fix the bugs based on the time of detection. And as you see, the most cheapest thing is in the requirements phase. In the coding itself, you still are okayish, but it gets really nasty, when you're in the acceptance testing or even in the production environment. And if we go to the next slide, when we're talking about costs, what would those costs look like? Well, for example, if you find a software security bug in the gathering, like in the requirement phase, adding that and defining it and making a story and make sure it's implemented in that sprint and doing the research about the security control to implement it correctly, like secure by design, will cost about $100. If you find this vulnerability, for example, or this bug in your Q&A testing, you are talking about around $1,500. And of course, when you find it in production, it's around 10,000. And then you're wondering, like, yeah, why, for example, if you find something in production, is it 10,000? Well, think about all the different teams and hands and departments this fix needs to go to again, right? You have the developer who need to gather the right requirements, build it, fix it, test it, release it, then penetration testing, security testing, secure code reviewing. So it passes all those different teams and squads eventually to verify again this thing. So this is only the amount of money you would lose and not even the impact that a certain vulnerability or bug could have on the system, right? So this is purely only for the whole release cycle. So as you see, the more you are in the beginning, the more aware, the more trained you are, you can do proper security by design. And like I said, you guys, the developers, are like Neos. You don't have to dodge bullets, right? You can simply stop them, because that's how fucking awesome you guys are. So guys and girls, prepare for battle and become the security champion. We have two type of chat channels, as you can see. We have one on Gitter and we have one on Slack. You can also find these links when you go to our GitHub repository. They are like badges, right, in the top of the README page of the GitHub of the Security Knowledge Framework. So if you click on them, you will also land on our chat channels. And if you have feedback or questions, or you have some issues, please drop by. We will always try to troubleshoot and help. So then I want to thank you all very much for your attention and listening to my half rant together with my brother. And we really hope you enjoyed the new feature that we demoed to you guys. And if you have any questions, you know where to find us.
Well, I'm going to ask one question though.
Yeah.
So say somebody's inspired and says, I want to help with Security Knowledge Framework. What kind of help are you looking for?
Wow, that's very broad. So basically helping in writing knowledge base items, reviewing the code examples, even help and enhance the front end. Because like you saw with the beta that we have, like normally if you would press the deploy button, you would like to see some sort of a spinning wheel until it's being deployed. So at least you know that something is happening in the background, right? But also in building features, doing security checks, we can basically use all the help that we can get.
Exactly, yeah, and and people who are more like in the offensive scene, like like to do hacking and stuff. For them, I would say have a look at the labs. I mean, we have like a good variety, but I think there could be more added there. And just clone one of the labs that was already there, and build your own type of vulnerability that you think is missing from the SKF labs. Write a write-up for it, and we will publish it as well, right, in the SKF, so everybody benefits from it. So many things can be done, to be honest, like content-wise, or feature improvement, or SKF labs, or from every aspect, help is very welcome, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are approaching 9 o'clock. I think the smart move now is that we go and have a quick little break, before we continue with Rob van der Veer to talk about OWASP integration project. Glenn and Riccardo, thank you very much for your time tonight and for your awesome presentation. And I hope to talk to you soon. And people, please stay put. We'll be back in a tick.
Yes.
And we're back, and I hope people have enjoyed that brief break. Hopefully, was enough time to go to the toilet or grab a new drink. Do be aware that the videos that you were seeing now, the live stream videos, we are also recording them. They will be available offline afterwards. Check out the OWASP website for also other upcoming events. We have a different one on the, I have to make sure I get this right, the 14th of May. We have Jeroen giving a talk. I don't quite know what the subject is going to be, but previously it has been about mobile, so maybe that will be again. I will look that up before this presentation by Rob will be over. So the next talk, and I need to click that. The next talk is by Rob van der Veer, who is a co-lead of the OWASP integration project. He will explain how the OWASP integration project is positioning OWASP as the linking factor in the complex and fragmented global standard landscape. We first start with ourselves by harmonizing OWASP projects so that they are better aligned, more consistent, and things are easier to find. The next step is to start collaborating with other standard makers, so to improve what is a difficult puzzle for many organizations. Are we finally nearing the end of fragmentation? And that is the question that Rob is going to answer for us. Rob, take it away.
Thanks very much, Tom. I hope I'm coming through well. Hi, guys. Good evening. Glad that I got the opportunity to talk about this brand new OWASP project. For those of you who don't know me, by the way, I'm not seeing my slides on the stream. Yeah, Tom's working on that. And next slide is building up.
There is a brief delay between what you see on YouTube and what you are sending me.
All right, then I'll just continue. Thanks, Tom. So my name is Rob van der Veer. I'm a principal consultant at SIG. I lead the security and privacy practice there. I also work with the Dutch CIP, working on grip on secure software development. I'm an advisor to ENISA, advising on specifically security certification, IEEE on privacy in software. And within OWASP, I'm working together with the SAM team on the agile nodes and also co-leading the integration project. And you might have seen me and my team at one of the OWASP AppSec events. This is in London, I believe, 2-3 years ago. We always have a booth there to meet you guys and to do nice competitions like the Code Cluedo. We're all about code review, static analysis, and code inspection, and we like to share that with you. So let me start by some news, which is ironically also part of the problem that we're trying to solve with the integration project. The news is that the new baseline requirements for grip on secure software development have been released, version 3. And so if you if you're not familiar with the Grip on Secure Software Development Initiative, it's an initiative from the CIP where we were also at the beginning. Its aim is to help software makers and clients to collaborate on software security. It has a little book called The Method that describes how you set requirements, how you manage your risks, how you do a verification, how you establish together the right set of requirements with your software maker. There's also a practitioner community, which is, I think, a large part of the success. System integrators and mostly government organizations that work together on how to set the right requirements. And there's also a publication called the Baseline Requirements, which lists a number of requirements based on the industry standards. And it's basically a short list, therefore baseline. So last week we released version 3. I was the co-author of this. We released it in beta, and we transformed it from a randomly ordered checklist into a structured guide using the ISO 25410 security model that we developed at SIG as a structure. It provides much more a logical structure to these requirements. And also, we added many links to resources at OWASP. So basically, the document has become an index on OWASP resources, and we did a lot of other improvements. Now, the funny thing is that this is part of the problem. There is a need for this document to create clarity in the world of security standards, and it introduces a new standard, basically. And this has happened a lot. If you look at one of the publications of the ECSO, a publication about existing cybersecurity standards, it is more than 200 pages long. Many, many standards. And these are all well intended, but they create a puzzle for organizations, for procurement, for developers, for testers. Where should we look? Well, maybe you say you should look at OWASP, but not everybody is really familiar with all the richness and the wealth of information that can be found in OWASP. And in many situations, there are requirements that are applicable in a different way, for which you need another publication. How do you find this? So this report, this long report, illustrates that the current standard and guideline landscape for software security is fragmented, complex, and confusing. And I'm sure you're recognizing this. And if you're a standard maker, it's hard to develop and maintain a standard that is up to date, to keep it up to date, to align it with new insights. So what the result is that there's a large set of publications available, and there are many commonalities, but also many gaps, many quality differences. And these initiatives can really benefit from each other if they would work together more. They could save work in development and maintenance, but also attain more consistency. And if you look at OWASP, it provides a bit of a puzzle as well. So this is, I don't know if Martin is still in the session, but Martin Knoploch and I work together on doing some research on the standard landscape. And the result of that is this structure back then. It's probably outdated, but to a large extent, it's still up to date. It lists with the various type of activities in the development life cycle, the many resources that are available in OWASP. And what is missing is something that links this together, because these different publications, they are describing the same things in a different way, or they are not yet up to date, or there are inconsistencies. And a lot of work is being done. I know about great work through Elisat and through Jeroen Willemse, who are really working hard to align these publications more. But the problem is broader and also outside of the flagship projects, and also outside of OWASP. So this is what we are working on. It's time to harmonize. This is the front page of a soon-to-be released ENISA report that says requirements largely overlap, demonstrating that software security is mainly a generic problem, and that both standard development organizations and European standard organizations are good practice producers, are often working without proper coordination and effective liaisons. And as positive as we feel as participators in OWASP, there are so many standards and certifications out there within different realms that within these realms, for example, OWASP resources are hardly known. And so the access to relevant resources that can really help organizations and teams is troubled. One of the recommendations in the report is develop a common repository for shared security measures. And this allows aligning on requirement commonalities, so the overlap of requirements in these standards. And this prevents proliferation and fragmentation, and also makes drafting and maintaining schemes, security requirements, more efficient in terms of mitigating the risks. Enter the OWASP Integration Standards project that I'm leading together with Spiros and Ellie. The goal is to enable alignment between software security initiatives inside OWASP and outside. And we want to make development and maintenance of standards easier, and we want to attain a shared understanding of security details in the industry between developers, testers, and procurement, linking things so they become more consistent, they become more accessible, and there is less variation and less fragmentation. Deliverables are a repository that links standards on requirements, testing strategies, countermeasures, threats, weaknesses. All these things are linked together. And some good work has been done for this, as you probably know, by MITRE, listing weaknesses, listing threats. At the level of security requirements, there is no such entity. And this is what we're working on. Apart from this repository of requirement entities and related subjects, we also want to provide a standardization on the integration of the different OWASP projects, how they exchange data and how they fit into the big picture. Much like the picture that came out of the work by Martin and me that I showed earlier. So how does it work? The common requirement enumeration. Here you see an example of 4 different resources: ASVS, MASVS, the Web Security Testing Guide, and a publication by NIST. They are linked by the fact that they talk about the same thing. They talk about the generation of session tokens. So the CRE is basically, in essence, just an ID. It can be much more, but in essence, it's just an ID, the ID that links these resources. And if you have this mapping, you allow teams to find all the information they need on a topic. So if they are working on creating session IDs, there's a lot to be found, and they can find it through this single idea instead of a long list of different resources that talk about it or might talk about it. And if you have these core requirements, you can also easily create lists that apply to certain situations. Certain domains, certain types of applications can quickly put together a list of these requirements and therefore indirectly set the right scope for development. So do you need to maintain this mapping? No. Recently, a mapping was made of IoT standards in the UK, leading to a 900-page document linking all these resources about IoT security together. This is unmaintainable. The idea is that the common requirement enumeration ID is included in the resources themselves. So the ASVS mentions it, the testing guide mentioned it, and NIST mentioned it. What's in it for these resources? Well, you can add functionality based on this, which is illustrated by this diagram. If you're looking at a resource, for example, you're looking on the web, on the mobile ASVS, you see some description there, but you also see a little button. If you click on it, you get the options to move to the different resources that are mapped to this. Now, this is the core functionality. It's quite simple. So politically, it's not simple. We need to get, of course, the buy-in and the inclusion of the good ideas of organizations like ENISA, like NIST, like ETSI, and you name them, to get the buy-in for this. Because it starts with the idea, but it can be much more powerful when you, for example, include the wisdom from the community in this. For example, the links that are most clicked or most used, that data you can use to determine the order of resources, making sure that the most used or most interesting resource is shown first with this CRE. You can also use this repository of CRE ideas as a basis to to collect exchange of ideas through a forum or comments that are linked to this CRE, creating sort of a centralized knowledge base and gathering of insights at a central place, binding together all these different initiatives into one spot. So this is what we're working on. Current phase is that we're doing this for we're starting to implement this for the flagship project, thanks to the great work of Ellie and the other people on the team, and exploring further how we can yeah, grow this initiative also functionality wise, and at the same time reaching out to the standardization organizations in Europe and outside Europe to see if we can collaborate on this. And that about sums it up. Thanks for listening. I hope you find it interesting, and I really would love to see if there are any questions.
Well, looking at the YouTube channel, at least there are no questions posed, but I do have one. Kind of similar question as what I was asking Riccardo and Glenn. Um, in what way do you look for people to come and help you with this project? It sounds like something that you, Ellie, and Spiros are working hard on amongst yourselves, but what kind of participation from the public are you looking for?
Yes, thanks for this, Tom. Um, we're looking for participation. The team should grow, needs to grow, and we're looking for people who really are motivated, who have a passion for this goal, making an end to putting an end to the fragmentation. Um, and this requires passion, but it also requires insight into application security, of course, because we need to make sense of all these things. Uh, Good links with people who are uh, uh, representing initiatives. So if you're involved in Etsy or in NEN, if you have good connections there, or in NISA or NISTs, please join. Even if you have suggestions, please drop a message. We're welcome to this because it's quite a complex undertaking, but it's necessary. And the cool thing about it is that it can put OWASP more on the map as the independent, open, community-driven initiative to make things clearer for everybody.
Now, the interesting thing from my perspective is that OWASP has long made various kinds of lists themselves, and we are making yet more lists. Um,
This is only human,
yes.
and a good thing, because some lists they die a slow death, or well, let's not call it death. Let's call it a very long sleep. Death sounds too dark, um, and rightfully so sometimes. But others grow into great initiatives. So one should try, but also I think that one should be willing to consolidate or give up. Um, and you see this happening also in OWASP. Some projects start and then they end, and some projects start and then they grow into something great for a specific part of what OWASP offers. Does it answer your question, Tom?
Yeah. I'm also going. I looked on the website, and it says that you are planning to have something ready to go in the third quarter of this year. Um, I'm just wondering what. So the deliverable is like the mapping that you are trying to achieve, and am I summarizing that correctly?
Yes, and the mapping is created by the different projects adopting the CRE and including it in their work. This implicitly creates the mapping and also maintains the mapping. So quarter three is the plan. We are depending on progress of, could you call it the lobby? Yes, let's call it a lobby, to work with the different standard organizations. It's a highly political environment, sometimes slow decision making, but we need them on board and we need their ideas and we need things to align with how they want it. It needs to remain open, of course, but everybody will have their ideas. We need to bring them together, and this perhaps could require some waiting and might delay our progress, but it's necessary.
Then I only have one more question, and that is, I know of the Mitre attack thing,
Hmm.
which is also a giant set of possible attacks and presumably mitigations against those attacks. Do you see overlap, integration, opportunities, etc. with that?
Definitely, these will be the first links that we create. Yes. So if you look at the slides that I presented, I think that a next iteration of this slide deck would be that I put in for illustration a KPAC or a CWE entry here,
Mm.
because they're very useful and they link more through other mitigation strategies, etc. But this, we feel that this is the sort of the entity layer, the concept that is missing in the picture, that is binding these things. And we don't want to recreate anything that MITRE has been creating. They have been working on an initiative that was also with an acronym CRE. It was something different. The first reach out I will do is to MITRE.
Okay, that's also all the questions I have. If people want to reach out to you, where do they go?
Rob Vanderveer on Twitter, uh, and I will basically type in my email address in the chat.
Perfect. Um, then all I can say is thank you very much, Rob, for your presentation. Um, let me jump out here, and so this and other and the previous presentation will come online on YouTube soon as like a regular talk, and we will link to it from the OWASP website. The next planned live stream is for the 14th of May. We will have Jeroen Willemsen, who is the leader of the OWASP Mobile Security Testing Guide project, as well as the Mobile Security Verification Standard. Um, he did not get back to me in time to tell me what his talk was about. Other people arranged that he was going to have time for this, so I apologize that I do not know his subject. Yeah, tune in for that. Look onto OWASP. See on the website what's going on, what we're going to be doing, and by all means, get involved. Thank you all very much for your time, and have a pleasant evening.